Okay. I think we're all set. Hi, folks. Good morning. Good evening. I'm assuming some of you are joining us from outside India as well. So good evening to you folks as well. Welcome to the webinar. The webinar is titled "From Success to Nightmare: The Story of a Cloud Misconfig That Destroyed a Business." Right. My name is Riyaz Walikar, and I will be leading the webinar today. I have my co-host Priyam Singh also on the call. She's going to take and manage any questions that come up. The Q&A panel is on the right side at the bottom. All right. My introduction, I'm one of the co-founders and chief hackers at Kloudle. I'm the chief breaker of things with the R&D team. We've been building Kloudle for SaaS engineers and infra teams to help detect assets in the cloud and identify misconfigurations and provide remediation guidance to save time for engineers, right? And so that they can continue being productive. Nobody wants to deal with security issues. We've got over a decade and a half worth of experience in breaking apps, mobile, web, the cloud, networks, wireless, all sorts of things, IoT devices. My washing machine as well recently broke that. And more recently, Kubernetes containers and environments. In a past life, I've led the product security teams and consulting teams at Citrix and PwC. Some of you on the call have actually worked with me in the past. I've been a speaker at multiple security conferences. I'm an author, trainer, security evangelist with a very short attention span. And I'm attracted to all things shiny. Right? That's how my wife describes me. I'm also a closet pre-amateur magician. I'd call myself pre-amateur because I'm not even there. This is the first time I'm performing. I wouldn't even call it performance. I'm going to show you some tricks that I've learned over the last several years. And the oldest audience that I've performed is about 4 years old. Right, I've never done magic shows or magic tricks in front of anybody who's older than that. Right, but I'll try some of those things today to entertain you folks, while also trying to pass the message of how the company WeAreSecure Fake, the business collapsed because of an exploitation in their cloud configuration. Right. My journey, or rather I wouldn't call it journey, I'm not like a full-time magician, but my first experience with magic was when I attended a magic show when I was about 8 or 9 years old in school. And I was really fascinated by this magician called my magician Ramesh. He pulled out a rabbit out of a book. Right, he was holding a book in his hand, a pretty thick book, and he pulled out a rabbit out of the book. And I'm a pretty rational chap, right? So I was pretty flabbergasted. I was completely confused how you could fit a rabbit inside a book. Right? The space itself was indeterministic at that point. And so really confusing at that point in time. And that kind of triggered my foray into try to understand how people perform magic. For there's a time period in your childhood when you're like looking at a magician and you're like completely in awe of what they've been doing, and you start to question reality. Like you go and try something, you try to pull out coins out of your parents' ears and nose and other things. So you take a handkerchief and you wrap it over your food and you try to turn the dal rice into like chicken biryani or something. Right? So I've tried all those things, failed miserably. And which is where I gave up on trying to become an actual performer on stage and things. Right? But I try to still baffle my wife and other kids, around my locality or even my cousins. It's pretty cool, right, when you see that expression in their face. So I'm going to try some of those things. But before we get there, the agenda for today, apart from the magic things that we're going to see, the tricks that we're going to see, we're going to look at the story of WeAreSecure Fake Inc. What happened to them? What was the misconfiguration that would have exploited? And some potential reasons why the misconfiguration could have happened in the first place. Right? This is still a cloud security webinar. The magic is the icing on the cake. Right? I call this fumble time because this is where I begin doing the magic. So what we'll do is I have this trick which I try and show to kids. This is a $2. This is an American $2. All the coins and notes that we are going to see today are American because we are an American company. Right? This is a $2. This contraption, this device, was given to me by a friend who went to Egypt and he met some Baba types person there. Basically, it is supposed to transport your money to an alternate dimension. Right? It's an empty casket. Right? The coin is here, and when you put it inside the casket, right? And you utter your magical words. The point is still here. When you put it inside the casket and you utter your magical words, right? All magicians have magical words, right? Abracadabra and whatever. I'm not a performing magician, so I don't have actual magic words, but I will say our magic mantra. Kloudle performs visibility and misconfiguration detection across multiple cloud providers and SaaS providers as well. Pretty cool product. Please do a trial. And what I do is I close the casket, right? That's it. There's no science behind this. But apparently, the way this works is it transports the coin to an alternate dimension, right? The one where Wanda Maximoff went on to search her kids and Dr. Strange followed her, right? It's a pretty simple trick. Otherwise, the casket, the box enclosure, you close and you utter your magic words. Kloudle is the coolest, and you bring out, and voila, your Mr. George Washington on the $250 comes back, the real coin. There you go. That was one. I have one more before we jump to content. This is a very flimsy looking handkerchief, hanky, extremely low quality. Please don't buy this. And I learned this trick when I was 15. It's really confusing at that point in time. I have my phone, right? And Samsung S22 Ultra, pretty cool. And the surface is made of Gorilla Glass, right? So we all know that. It's pretty advertised and stuff. What this trick involves is passing this handkerchief, this hanky, flimsy little thing, 5 rupees, through the phone, right? And my phone's pretty heavy, so I have to kind of keep it down. The trick involves you forcing your way through. Let me drill the hole. It's pretty inhuman, so please don't look at this. And do you see this? Oops, it's stuck. I think it's reached the. Oh, I think it's stuck at the processor. One second. I don't want to break my phone. Ow. Yeah, I think it's gone towards the processor. Let me just wrap this up. And abracadabra. Kloudle is the coolest. Voila, the phone's back. The handkerchief is, as usual, completely normal. Please don't buy this. It's a very low quality handkerchief. All right. So let's talk about WeAreSecure Fake Inc, right? So this company, WeAreSecure Fake Inc, was a young startup with about 50 employees, building a cloud native SaaS, right? Like most startups and small businesses, they don't have a dedicated security team. Cloud security, often in startups like these small companies, is a small checkbox, right? And most companies don't have dedicated teams, right? They're often led by the lead dev and an infrastructure engineer, especially usually a pass out from college with 1 or 2 years of experience. They're doing the patchwork. If any of this resonates with you, right, you know who you are. The infra engineer at WeAreSecure Fake Inc ran tools every now and then what the tools would tell the engineer, they would go ahead and try and fix them. However, there were several AWS resources that were misconfigured, and they seem to originate from product design decisions, right? And often that happens with product companies where they've created something and they used whatever services and resources were available, and then they hit, started getting customers. The security or design change takes a backseat, right? And I've seen this firsthand at a lot of companies that I've worked with. The onus then lies on obscurity and trying to hide stuff behind fake curtains. And there's this saying, right? Like one man's trash is another man's treasure, I think it is. But in the security world, misconfigurations are very contextual. They are very context-heavy association, right? One man's feature could be another man's misconfiguration, and that way. So what happened with them was at 2 a.m. in the night, the founder of WeAreSecure Fake, and this is not speculative, we've received some information from the attackers themselves. Very kind enough to share this with us. At 2 a.m. in the night, the founder of WeAreSecure Fake Inc received an email from AWS. I'm looking at the screens because I have the sliders on the left. I received an email from AWS saying that their data transfer for S3 had been reached, right? And it was real weird. At 2 a.m., the email got ignored. Shortly after, the SaaS product and the company website went down. And in the morning, the founder checked with the lead and noticed that their AWS service usage showed over 140 GB of data had been transferred, and both the buckets where the SaaS was using were now empty. And that was weird. Both the S3 buckets were critical to the business because one was used by the SaaS product to upload and download user data, and one was used to host a static site, right? The company's website. That meant that the product was down and the company's interface to the world, the website, was also down, right? That this is how their site used to look, right? And they're an analytics company. They make a SaaS. So what was the misconfiguration, right? Two buckets were found to be misconfigured. The business used S3 buckets to serve static web content for their website, right? And a lot of companies tend to do this. They have a CNAME that points to the company domain. Because it's static, they push content to the S3 bucket. The second and perhaps the more important bucket for them was used to upload and download end customer data, customer card information and logs and stuff, right? Both the buckets had been assigned an ACL of full control to the IAM grantee global authenticated users. Now, this was the problem, right? And it is amazing the number of buckets out there actually have this ACL, right? And it's insane. This essentially allows users to any AWS user on the internet with any AWS credentials, right? I could use my AWS credential on your bucket in your account if the global authenticated users is assigned full control. You could read, write, and delete content from both the buckets, right? When I saw what the misconfiguration was, that was an expression, and I think a lot of other folks as well. The important key piece here is to understand that the misconfiguration caused a chain of events, right? The attackers were nice enough to send us some screenshots as well. The get bucket ACL on the bucket, WeAreSecure Fake website, bucket names, and as security folks would go, you know how trivial it is to enumerate bucket names if you understand the naming convention of the company. You have your grantee, who's global authenticated users, and you have the permission full control assigned to it, right? That's one bucket. The other was prod app data, again, the same permission, right? There's a worse grantee that you would have assigned, the all users, in which case you wouldn't need credentials as well, right? But the fact that it was global authenticated users gives us some idea into why it must have happened. The attackers were also nice enough to send us a short video of their exploit. I'll play that for you. They checked the bucket ACL. They saw that it had a global authenticated users in full control. As any attacker would go, they listed the contents of the site, of the bucket. And they copied the contents of the bucket to a local folder recursively. That's their entire website, which they repeated on the prod app data bucket as well. And then they deleted the contents of the bucket because they had full control of the bucket. Yeah, teasing us with an LS now. Obviously, there's no content in the bucket. There's nothing that's going to show up. The important thing here to see is that the attackers knew, right? They could completely trash the business and make sure that the website goes down and the production application data, the bucket that contains the app data folder itself, the content from the SaaS, that also is taken down, right? Let me go to the next slide. The video started again. It's important to understand, try and reason at least. This is speculation at this point in time, but the reasons why the misconfig could have happened, because it's actually quite difficult to create a bucket and give authenticated users or all users write permissions, right? It's actually not possible through the UI. You have to run an explicit command to create an ACL that gives write permissions to the all users and authenticated. The options are grayed out otherwise in the UI, right? Which means that there was some deliberation involved in with the developers to create this. Okay. So we've tried to speculate. They did not give us, WeAreSecure folks did not give us any information as to why the misconfiguration was in there in the first place. should have used Kloudle, they would have been able to detect this pretty much early. We actually, Kloudle detects this as a critical flaw in your bucket configurations. The most common reason we've seen with a bunch of customers and during trainings when we speak to folks as well, the most common reason we've seen buckets ending up misconfigured is because the permissions are actually too complex to set up. Right? You want your app to not only write to a bucket but read from different parts of the bucket. You have specific files that have to be written, specific accounts that need permission, things like that. Devs need to write to S3 all the time, right? And instead of using pre-signed URLs, although the documentation is available by AWS on how to use pre-signed URLs safely, securely, allowing English and write permissions is a dirt shortcut, right? And then developers and leads rely on infra folks rely on the buckets obfuscation, the name. And if nobody knows the name, how will they attack it, right? That's sort of mentality. Different devs at different times would have worked on the code differently, causing a design flaw to creep in, right? And this is something that we speculated. Given that full control is assigned to authenticated users and not to the worse all users grantee, there's a possibility that attempts were made to give access to multiple AWS accounts. Right? The devs would have tried to give read-write access to the bucket to different accounts, and then spaghetti code being written, it was simpler to give list and write to authenticated users, right? Because the end object would be like, hey, we don't know what account would want access at this point in time, at a future date. Okay. More fumble time for you folks. Coming back to what do I show you next? See, I'm a little hungry. I always some food from not food. Ask my wife to order something. She ordered Oreo. Do you folks like Oreo? No. You can do thumbs up, thumbs down if you don't like Oreo. I'm not a big fan. Wow, so many people liking Oreo. Not a big fan of Oreo. It tastes good, tastes weird. No, not a big fan. It actually tastes like Fevicol when I'm eating. What's you? I don't like this. I have to return this packet. There you go. The whole Oreo, nobody's seen me eat this. So I'm going to put it back in the packet and give it away to my wife. Will not tell her that I tried to eat it and did not like the taste. So there you go. Okay. I have one last trick for folks, and I think I'll teach you this trick. It's one of my favorites. I was a kid when I learned this. Our George Washington Liberty 94 coin is here back again. Right. I'm going to stop sharing because I can't see what I'm doing otherwise. All right, stop sharing. Okay. Okay. I'm assuming I'm like the biggest window on your screen. You can pin otherwise. Yeah. So here's a coin. This is one of my the oldest tricks in my book, a short 3-page book that I have for my musicians. And this coin, right? Essentially, I hold the coin here, and right, my hands are empty. I take the coin, and I have to keep a look at the hand that's taken the coin. Right, the coin's not here. Right, the coin's here. You're not focusing, folks. If you look carefully, the coin's here. Okay, I take the coin. It goes here. You can actually see, if you look carefully, you can see the coin drop into my hand. Right, you can see this coin. It's dropped in my hand. This is called a French drop. I'll actually teach you this. You have to hold the coin, right, like this. Okay, and you have to put your thumb underneath the coin like this, and you have to drop the coin in your hand and act as if you're going to pull out the coin. Okay, you have to hold the coin like this, right, and you have to, you get it? You hold the coin in your hand, and there you go. The coin's always here. It's never left his hand, right? So you take the coin back again and do this, right? But sometimes when you're not paying attention, you tend to miss out that the coin's actually gone from both hands. Right? So if you've not paid attention, basically, right? But there are times when kids come back and like, hey, uncle, can you like pull out the coin from auntie's ears or from someone's hair or somebody's food or somebody's samosa, right? So the way I do this is I use my hands and I try to pull it out of my ear. I should have one here. There you go. It's the same quarter. George Washington 94. I should have signed. Sorry, I should have signed this. Cool. So that's the trick I had. French drop, you can totally try and mimic this so that you have the coin always in this hand. But if you're not paying attention, it goes away. All right, let's go back to my question screen. There you go. Okay, we've got 5 minutes before the end of the webinar. Any questions? We'll take them now. We'll try and answer any questions you may have. Cloud security focused, magic focused, right? Anything about how WeAreSecure could have they could have fixed or predicted this early on? Anything that could have saved their business? There's the Q&A button is at the bottom. We're not opening the mic for because I can't open it for one person. I have to open it for everyone. So Ajit has a question. If you would please quickly type it, that'd be useful. Please type your questions in the Q&A section at the icon at the bottom. Click on activities, click on Q&A, and you can ask a question. Yeah, folks, the chat is disabled. Thank you, Akbar. The chat is disabled. If you're trying to chat, I don't think the chat works at all. So the only way to interact and ask questions is through the Q&A section on the right. That's how most webinar systems are designed. Anurag asked a question: if they have implemented pre-signed URL, how WeAreSecure could have remained secure? So pre-signed URLs allow developers to create at runtime a predefined pre-signed URL using the AWS APIs that allows you to write or read to a bucket, and you can't use it outside the expiry time of the pre-signed URL, right? So you don't have to then make the bucket world writable or even account writable or readable for the point in time. You can use a pre-signed URL, generate a pre-signed URL. And it's again on the server. None of this has to be on the client. You can generate this on the server, send the pre-signed URL to the client. The client uses the pre-signed URL to upload or download a file, right? And then the pre-signed URL expires. If this was implemented, then the bucket, the requirement for the bucket to be world writable and world readable did not need to be there, right? So that requirement itself is gone. Any resources for red teaming cloud environments? There are a bunch of them, and most of them are on GitHub. I don't have a specific single resource for you, but I always advocate, and whenever I speak and I mentor folks as well, I always advocate the ability of, or rather the power of doing hands-on stuff, right? So you pick whatever resource you have on red teaming that you discover on GitHub or folks may have written. We actually write a lot of content on the Kloudle Academy with the URLs on screen as well, and on our blogs as well. But if you don't practice this hands-on, like create your own server, create your own cloud run, create your own Lambda, right? Create your own bucket, put different configurations, and see what tools, how different tools like Paco or something would work with that particular misconfiguration, how you can exploit them, right? If you don't do hands-on, then the reading will not make a lot of sense, right? So, Riyaz, I want to make a career in this guy. Ajit, this is a longer answer. Yeah, somebody, Frederick is posted status red team is a useful resource for red teaming. Vaishali, your question. Ajit, your question has a pretty longer answer, but get started, right? So if you want to make your career in cloud, regardless of where your original what your background is, you need to start. You need to go sign up on all these 3 or 4 or 5 major cloud providers, sign up, create resources, see how they interact, work with the CLI, right? And see how the environment is. Unless you do hands-on, that's how you acquire the knowledge for cloud, because everything is API driven. There's enough documentation that the cloud providers themselves give you, and it's all API driven. If you want to build your career in the cloud, specifically cloud security, all cloud providers also provide a lot of tools, and there are a bunch of open source as well as paid tools available out there. Enough resources around all of these, right? That would allow you to build your career. But essentially, get started. Specialize that cloud providers have their own certifications if that is useful. A lot of companies do rely on certifications as a way of verifying whether you acquired that knowledge or not, right? So maybe pick up certification tracks from the different cloud providers and work with them. Can you again show exploit part? Yeah, I can run the video again. So, minute video. AWS S3 API. It's not AWS S3. It's AWS S3 API, which is another CLI call within AWS. Get bucket ACLs to see the bucket ACLs, access control list in the bucket. LS to actually verify that you have the ability to list data within the bucket. Copy -- recursively to download data from the bucket to a local folder. Hack download / website is a folder locally used. And the dangerous RM command to recursively delete the contents of the bucket. And then LS to confirm that stuff actually got deleted. I think we're at the end of our time here with you folks. Then no more questions. We'll close. What can startups do? One sec. Swati is asking, what can startups do in case of security resource shortage to stay secure in the current scenario? A good question, and I'm biased. You should try and implement Kloudle, but there are some key things that you can start with, right? Educating, having security built into the culture of the company is a key important thing. Educating your folks that, hey, whatever you create, there are ways of creating it securely. Right? Review your design for whatever product you're building. Right? And there's enough documentation available by the cloud providers themselves on how to configure something securely or not. Right? Between the choice of making it easy for your end customers and choosing a secure implementation, like the most secure implementation of a system is going to be completely unusable, and in the security triangle. Right? So you have to figure out a sweet soft spot that works for your company and your customers. But as a startup, again, education to your developers about security, and working with the security know-how which is already present within the cloud infra. Yes, you'll get a recording of this meet. We'll upload it to our YouTube channel within a day, and we'll send out an email to all the folks who are registered. What resource? This is the last question I'll take. What resource helps you when you research pen test a brand new service launched? So I mostly take a brute force approach towards things. If a new service has been launched, and again, because I realize that cloud providers are all API driven, right? That you can, if it's API, you can intercept it using a burp or a zap proxy or something like that. But even if it's CLI, CLI is again uses the API calls in the backend. You can have your CLI go through burp and explore what the API calls are doing. You would pen testing that service itself. You would again, from a web application API point of view, you're interacting with the cloud service APIs at a web app API level. So security testing there, and by creating the resource itself, if it gives you a shell, if it has credentials to use from the cloud provider, figure out what is the configuration that the resource has. What are the types of credentials it is going to use from the cloud provider? What are the kinds of what are the kinds of access that the service is going to use within the cloud from across different resources that it's supposed to interact. Like if you have API gateway put up in front of S3, right? What are the kind of permissions that API gateway requires with S3? And that's an example. Or if you have an EC2 instance, if you have an instance role attached to an instance, what are the kind of credentials you can generate? Because IAM is a different service that gets attached to EC2, right? Things like those. Folks, we're a little over time. Kloudle, this is a business question. I'll hand this over to Akash, who will reach out to you, Riyaz. For startups in the security team, they also get help from a consulting firm. Yeah, that's a good answer. Like AppSecure, yes. But also because startups tend to work with money, the constraints of financial constraints, right? So consulting with an external firm may not always seem like a good answer unless something comes gives you great value for far less money than you'd blow on a consulting firm. But yes, that's also something, one of the approaches that you could definitely take, or look for something that provides you absolutely equal or above par value than more expensive tools out there, right? Like tools that I think Riyaz also mentioned, pretty expensive in the market. And for tools that are available that provide equal or greater value and don't burn a hole in your pocket, right? Cloud being one of them. All right, folks. Thank you so much for making it to the webinar. We'll have the video recording uploaded to our YouTube channel. You can like, share, and subscribe there, right? And we're going to do more of these webinars coming this year. There's another webinar that we have planned for the end of the month. And going forward, we're going to talk a lot more about other misconfigurations and how you can detect, exploit, and secure. All right. Thank you so much. Have a great day ahead. Bye-bye.